Hi, good morning or evening, wherever you are. Okay. So I'm Manuel Genovés. I'm a developer and artist. I'm going to talk about open source funding today. You might know me as I am the apostrophe maintainer and a GNOME foundation member. But who I am not. I'm not a non-representative, nor a lawyer, nor an economist. This will be an essay with my points of view, so take it with a grain of salt. No, before I speak, I'm gonna talk about app funding, being that we are at Linux Summit. Desktop funding and libraries funding are just as important. Desktops are the base of the user experience, and libraries are at the core of everything. But to have all these missing apps, we need to fund everything. You cannot have a sane ecosystem if the base is not well maintained. And sadly, libraries are not the best well-funded thing in the world. For example, we all remember what happened with OpenSSL. OpenSSL was underfunded and undermaintained, yet 2/3 of the websites at the time depend on it. Heartbleed put the whole internet in a hole, but also it put the issue of libraries funding on the spot. Sadly, library funding is a quite complex topic, and I won't have time to discuss it today. So let's talk about apps. Now, money is the world as we know it. If you want to live, to exist, you need money. That's an issue for open source developers because, as we all know, open source doesn't give a lot of money, or better phrase, it doesn't give a lot of money to open source developers because companies profit a lot from it. When I say a lot, I mean the case of Netflix. Netflix report $20 billion revenue and around $2 billion on income in 2019. Netflix is a company that heavily depends on Python. At his core, there are lots of Python. Yet Python only made $3 million in revenue and $500,000 of income in the same year. Netflix funds Python. Netflix is in the donor Hall of Fame of Python. Yet there are other companies like Spotify or Amazon who also depend on Python, yet they don't fund it, or at least not publicly. That means that people usually end giving up on projects in favor of more profitable day jobs. This is the frequency graph of my commits on apostrophe. This empty zone is when I was hired by a big company to do work I didn't love, to be honest. Believe me, I'd rather have been improving apostrophe, but I needed the money, so I stopped contributing to the project all this time. Let me be clear, the rest of the presentation I'll be talking on how to play by capitalist rules, but we must acknowledge that there is an underlying issue. Society functions around the concept of extracting profit from perceived value, and that clashes frontally with activities such as course development. But we are not alone in that. Artists, for example, have been dealing with this for a long time. I have the moral need to point to the root issue and to radical solutions here. Take political actions if you want sensible improvements in this problem. Open source benefits society such as art or science, but is almost exclusively fundraised by the means of the people who can afford it to give it time, such as art or science in another time, as painting portraits. How does solve this arts and science? basic science, in contrast with applied science. Applied science does seek a returning investment, usually. So private companies fund applied science, but basic science, the kind of science which doesn't seek an immediate return of the investment, is nowadays heavily public funded and a key towards society's well-being. I mean, this is CERN. CERN has this budget annually. It's a lot of money. It could be better, but this is a lot of money. And this is a lot of money not direct towards benefit. Just we know science is important, we fund it. And art, in the same center, there are artistic residencies, and there are artistic residence public fund all around the world. Every city has at least one museum with publicly acquired art. That's common. We are used to fund activities which, while not being capitalizable, benefit society as a whole. Now, what about us? I think it's time we ask society to start sponsoring not only big open source projects, but also individuals and small applications. Or even better, we can ask our politicians something like universal basic income, which will solve a lot of these problems. And it might sound like an utopia, but right now there are proposals you can sign to ask that in the European Parliament. Especially after the pandemic, this is becoming a common thing to ask for. In fact, if you want to sign this, there is the link and a QR. Now, we should explore as well the not so obvious path of universities. Universities have been the way society allocates public resources for arts and science for a long time. There is a lot of money there, and it's a good opportunity for developing good open source software. Monetization of open source applications is a faceted problem. Today we'll tackle three aspects of it. The social issues, I've been talking a little bit about this one. The cultural issues, which are the natural consequence of the first ones, and the psychological issues, which are entirety or fault, and also always bet if we want to change things for our community. The social issue. I'm not going to explain down how markets undercapitalize. One easy concept to anyone can grasp is that the perceived value matches the actual value of the product. It's in this difference between those two values where profit is made, in fact. Now, a lot of things influence that perceived value, but one of the most important ones is the price tag we put in it. Good things don't come cheap, and we've been conditioned our whole life with that premise. That's why raising the price often raises the perceived value of the product it references. That directly plays in our disadvantage, since science-free products automatically are perceived as worse than their commercial counterparts. So that is known as the Veblen effect, and is used a lot by companies such as the automotive industry. A well-known example is Audi and Volkswagen cars. An Audi might not cost much more than their counterpart to manufacture. It costs a lot more to the customer. And just because of that is why more desirable by the public. Interestingly enough, there is a situation where the word free mobilizes hundreds of people. And that's when something that was a paid product is offered for free at some point. The price tag helps to set the perceived value regardlessly of what you pay at the end. That's how discounts work. It's a basic market strategy. We are not the only ones with this issue. See, I'm in Spain, known for one of the best public healthcare programs in the world, or at least that's what we like to say to anyone willing to listen. It is a universal and free healthcare program which covers almost everything. Yet precisely being free, people underestimate how much costs the operation they just have. There are people who think that we should include a deal, even if at the end of it says everything is subsidized or something like that, precisely because of this. And this also provokes another problem, which is entitlement, but I'll be talking about that later. There's yet another thing that plays in our disadvantage. I'm sure a lot of you know this situation. We're very bad at estimating costs. Yesterday we had a talk on GTK4. It doubled the estimation of time it will take to develop it. We all have been faulty at this kind of thing. Usually implementing that easy function costs us 4 times more than what we thought. Time is deceiving, it is for us, and it is even more for our users. Clean, neat apps that seem to be easy to develop usually are the ones that take longer to develop. And in a world where time is money, that means that users will consistently underestimate how much a project costs. Now, on cultural issues. We've been feeding the idea that everything at Linux land is and should be free, as in money. And in fact, that's usually one of the hooks we use to attract people to this world, except that nothing is free. And the costs of free software are assumed by the developers, as I was telling at the start of the talk. Promoting a culture of everything not only has consequences on the perceived value of what we have to offer. See, this is a Linux App Summit photo from last year. It's a beautiful photo. It shows also something I like a lot about this community, which is diversity. But diversity is severely impacted when we don't offer an economic cushion, especially for groups of people we are already discriminated by society. See, this is a graph. It shows male, female, and non-binary people, but polls usually don't take non-binary people into account. 22.6% of developers are female, but in open source, only 3% are female and only 1% are non-binary. Same goes for ethnic minorities. If 34% of developers are from an ethnic minority in open source, only 16% are. By being free, we also, there are a lot of issues here. I'm not gonna pretend money is the only issue, but definitely having a system which encourages people who have the means of contributing because they have free time or economic cushion contributes to this. No, on psychological issues. I'm gonna recapitulate a little bit. A donation-based model lowers the fear of loss you might have in a payment-based model. It taps your expectations a lot. So why is that? If we think about other donation-based models, they are usually built around the idea of we are doing a public good and we need your trust and money to keep doing it. Well, trust is a hard thing to give, and you usually want the money you donate to be well employed. Only that. This is a graph on a typical European yearly budget. You have housing, which amounts for 1/4 of the total income, food, transport. This square, that is donations. The white big square are other things, some things, tools, whatever. The red square is donations. We are competing, putting ourselves in that red square with this kind of foundations and non-profits. We are comparing a text editor with Intermon Oxfam, for example. That is a bad place to be. We want to compete with other fun things or tools or whatever the user is spending their money, not with charities. Also, that leads to user entitlement, as I was saying before. I think everyone has experienced it, any developer. This was an issue open in GNOME calendar, a common issue. We want holidays of our country as calendar events, but they start to make very, very entitled claims, like even Apple does what users ask for. I mean, you are telling that to a person which is devoting their free time to give you a product, and you are still asking things like you deserve them. No, friction is another issue we have, which affects both based models and pay what you want models or that, but it affects us. Say someone perceives actual value in your app and is willing to donate some money to it, or even to comply with the price you set in a pay what you want model. Probably it won't donate at the end, and that's because of the friction of the process. Let's see how the donate workflow goes for a regular app. Fragments is a BitTorrent app. It's very nice. And I want to donate to it. So I open the menu, go to the app fragments item, and a pop-up opens. There is a link to the GitLab homepage. I click it. There are a lot of things in the GitLab page. I scroll down. There is a button to download on FlatHub. We go there, and there it is, a donate button, which takes to the LiberaPay page of the developer. And we still have to make an account on LiberaPay if we don't have one, and we still have to enter our payment details and go to the phone and enter the PIN. The bank asks us. It's a process with a lot of friction, and as easy as continue using the app without doing anything. Given two paths, people will always follow the one of less resistance. Easier to pirate than to pay $2, people will pirate. Luckily, that goes both ways. If we make easier to pay, people will pay. I mean, those companies are built around that concept. Steam or Netflix made easier to enter the payment data once and then forget about it. You have a whole catalog of games or movies, whatever. And people pay because it's easier to do that than to be searching on various forums. Amazon and PayPal, those are companies that profit from you paying through their platform. So they make paying super easy. You only have to click one button to make a purchase on Amazon or to send money with PayPal. If we make the path smooth, people will pay. It's as easy as that. No, give me actual solutions. I don't have them. I already said that, in my opinion, our best bet comes from public money. In any case, let me give you a bit of warning before giving some tips and tricks of things we could do. Beware of success. Blender, Krita, those are great apps. Everybody knows them. They are sustainable. but the amount of apps which are sustainable is very, very small. This is like football music groups or football, or even regular business. The percentage of people who succeed is by no means representative of the majority of the businesses or programs or music groups. Beware of crowdfunding. For the majority of people, it doesn't work. For some, does. I'm not saying don't try it. I'm just saying be careful with your expectations, as they can deceive you. A lot of people, even very good developers which contribute a lot, don't make it through LiberaPy or through Patreon. This is a little bit more serious. I don't know if you know Bounty Source. It changed hands. It happened a lot of things with it. It's a platform where there are the issues of projects and you pay for an issue to be solved. And the developer who solves that issue is the one who can claim that money. Bounty Source have some problems, some public backlash, but I want to talk specifically about the Cobra effect. The term Cobra effect originated in an anecdote that describes an occurrence during India under British rule. The British government was concerned about a number of venomous cobras in Delhi. The government therefore offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially, this was a successful strategy as large numbers of snakes were killed for the reward. Early, however, enterprising people began to breed cobras for the income. When the government became aware of this, the reward program was shut down, causing the cobra breeders to set the worthless snakes free, and the wild cobra population further increased. I simply copy-paste that text from Wikipedia, but this story is what it is, and it's a good story, and it's true. The thing is, if you put a price tag on a problem, you are encouraging that problem to exist. It's a tricky question, and I advise against it. So what we need to do, what we do, we solve put prices into things, even if the user ends not paying anything or paying what they want. And we should showcase the effort we put into apps. I don't know, maybe time spent in this app task in software stores could do it. And here I want to shout out to one company who has been doing this successfully, which is Elementary. Elementary has this greeting page when you want to download their system. It says pay what you want. You have 3 options, and then a custom option where you can put even $0 if you want. But this already makes a difference, is what I was saying. This is not a free operating system you can donate to. This is a paid operating system you can buy for $0 if you want. This already makes a difference. They told me between 1 or 2% of people who download it donate, which might seem a low number, but it's a very high compared to the amount of people which usually donates in other models. And it's interesting as well, people usually put 0 and download it for free. But then you have people which puts $1, which is the minimum allowed quantity other than 0 to download it. And then you have people which pays $10. By making easy to pay $10, by having a direct button there, people pay $10 instead of, I don't know. We make things easy, people follow. They know their target, it's not the usual Linux user, is a user. They know bubbles, they break them. And those are regular business practices, which is another point. If you want to be like Disney, you have to do business things like marketing or like reaching and doing investigations about your target and the market, which is something app developers usually don't do in the open source realm. Everything okay? No, a platform point of view proposal. This is what I want. This is a markup. It's not anything planned, but this is what we want GNOME to have. In settings, a payments option where you can put your bank data, your card data, and then you have a simple API to donate. So apps don't have to do anything, just implement the API. You click the donate button, you click donate, and money goes from the user to the developer. It needs to be something trustable. This is why it needs to be an API and not some apps implement themselves. We need it to be centralized. The desktop or the platform plays a big role, and it needs to be frictionless. You click one button, you don't need to do anything more. You put your data, your bank data once, you don't need to put it anymore. Regarding the trustable thing, it needs to be an API. We already do something like that for other things, thanks to Flatpak and portals. Apps don't know everything about the system. They can't access the camera or the file system. We delegate on the system for that through portals. So we already laid the ground for having this kind of interoperability between apps and system, and it's a secure interoperability. For users to put their bank data, we also need to offer incentives, and this is something interesting as well to platforms to have for funding platforms, though this is not a talk on how to fund platforms. But there are lots of things platforms could offer, like configuration backups or sync between devices or push notifications, things service based on the cloud. It might not be backups, but things that make applications a little bit better. And this needs to be paid, of course. Everything in cloud needs to be paid. And that also is an incentive for users to join the paid ecosystem within the platform. So that will be all. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions. They say, do you think that the fact that the zero tag is not actively displayed on element? Or yes, Alison? Well, yes. Do you think the fact that the $0 tag is not actively displayed on Elementario's website prevents them to reach a wider audience? I don't think so. In fact, they share some data with me. They had that tag at the beginning. They don't have anymore, and and now they receive 10 times more money thanks to not having that tag. What is your opinion on the addition of sponsorship donation buttons on GitHub? Do you think this will help the development of open source? Of course. This is similar to what I proposed at platform level, but on GitHub. The thing is that by having it on the repository, it does not reach a wider audience. usually people don't reach to the repos for downloading software. So you are limiting your audience to developers when you have your sponsorship only on here. Don't you feel users will be wary of us asking about right their bank data? That's why we need to be trustable regarding that. I mean, we already are managing their data and their privacy. So if we want a solid foundation, this is foundations sole managed, which is tricky. It's tricky to manage payment data and to set up the infrastructure and the legal infrastructure for to do that. But that's why we have things like the unknown foundation, and they should care of that. What do you think about having some kind of open source app, monthly subscription, something like Spotify for open source apps? That is interesting. It'd be interesting to have some sort of cooperative or umbrella to sponsor apps and app developers. This is something interesting to have. How do you see all the communities in here collaborating to make this happen? It will be wonderful. We already have this summit, which is a collaboration between KDE, GNOME, and other players, which is a very good first step. And we already collaborate in other things, like the portals I've talked before. So I could totally see that happen, and it'd be wonderful.